Hello, everyone. Good evening. Welcome to another amazing episode of Agritech Founders Diary, where we have conversations with amazing entrepreneurs who are doing amazing stuffs in the ecosystem of agriculture. So, joining us this evening is an amazing entrepreneur, Mr. Shadrack, from all the way from South Africa. I've followed some of the work that Mr. Shadrack has been doing. He has been doing a lot of amazing work, and recently is about to launch an agritech company in the agritech industry. So we decided to bring him off stage to ask him some questions. He is heavily in blockchains, and now he's moving into agritech industry. So we wanted to see why, what's behind it, and why does he want to come into agriculture. But before we move on, I want to appeal to you guys, please do it to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. Don't forget to hit the notification buttons to get notified whenever we are up like this, we are live, and then drop your comments, like the video so we can get more reach. Thank you guys for always tuning in and for joining us every time. Once again, thank you all for joining us. Thank you very much, sir, for honoring our invitation. But first of all, once to begin, I would like you to tell us where you got from. Tell us everything about yourself, where the whole journey started from.
Thank you. Thank you once again, Kenneth, and much appreciated for inviting me on this diary entry, and also much appreciated to the audiences that are joining in this conversation. Looking forward to their comments as well as they interact with us. But it's really more like a family conversation than one way. But yeah, it's great to be here. Well, ask about yourself. That's a good question. Some on the call might be familiar that I am a villager at heart, meaning I was raised by two generations of very fierce, industrious women, and that's my granny at the top tier, and following in her footsteps, that's my mom, and they really exposed me to the nature of business and the industrious moving parts of farming, even though it was really at a much more minuscule level compared to the scale at which I'm focusing. And yeah, so I grew up back in the village from my humble beginnings, living off the ground. And from there, while they taught me business and resilience and survival, God bless them for that. And I then ended up in corporate, and that's where I got to learn scale. In corporate, where I was with Deloitte, among others, I got to learn the distinct difference between rowing and canoeing. Just for the benefit of the audience, rowing can be a solo sport, but canoeing is a team sport. And that's what canoeing shares with blockchain, and that's what canoeing shares with farming. No single farmer can venture out there and do it all by themselves. It takes a team sport. And that's what I learned in corporate. How do you move from 0 to 5 billion? Those are some of the things that I was very privileged to be part of, or to be a catalyst in making those things happen. Survival in the village, resilience at the village, but scale in the big city and in a big boys club called corporate. And of course, I'm also a Pan-African leader and a global citizen. So when I left corporate and I hung my hat at Deloitte, I exited to go into running a thriving boutique business practice. That's where I got to learn how to combine my two experiences. I got to be ambidextrous. I got to use the left hand of survival, resilience, and tunnel vision. And I got to use my right hand of scale, where I get to do more canoeing and less rowing. So yeah, that's really in a nutshell how my humble beginning closed off in the big city, and I ended up with a front row seat on how industry works, how the informal economy intersects with the mainstream economy. And that's where I'll be sharing more with the viewers on how that journey ultimately led into the segue into blockchain, where the co-founding of Coronet Blockchain, and of course, what is prime on my dashboard, the co-founding and bringing into industry the eFama Marketplace application.
Great. I want to ask, why did you left the Deloitte? Why did you left the corporate world to coming to the rural world?
You
What's the
know,
reason?
that's a very good question. That's a very good question. You know, there comes a point where your lived experiences are going to
Mm-hmm.
usher you to an intersection. And at that intersection, you could continue being effective from your corporate desk and getting very decent perks, I must admit, or you could take a different trajectory where impact will be mingled with some decent wins along the way. So I had to
Mm-hmm.
really depart the Africa vision I had to help to co-create the Africa I want. It's not something that I could allow myself to be held back and basically ask my business leaders and bosses at the time to become maybe as passionate about the things that I was passionate about. I wanted to live when there was no bad blood. I wanted to live when there was no tensions. And I wanted to live in such a way that even though I left Deloitte for almost 15 years now, I have not truly left. In a sense, because in the last 15 years, almost a year or two, there's always been an invitation back to my Deloitte family, back to my Deloitte community. Even this last 2 weeks, I actually was attending a book launch by one of my business leaders from Deloitte, who has remained my mentor to date. So I still
Mm.
have green blood. I remember the green dot for Deloitte. I still have green blood running in my veins. But with all that they've blessed me and taught me, I had to venture out there and be the one that got away to embark on actively shaping the Africa we want. And you know what? They have been blessed for it because I'm sending intel back home now and then. And I have been blessed for it because despite the epic challenges, the epic results have really been more rewarding than I realized. Yes, so that's why I
Mm.
hung that jacket to take on the jacket of bold entrepreneurship. And I've been on this trajectory since then.
Great. Oh, awesome. Let me ask you, what's been your biggest challenge you faced while trying to launch eFarm app? What's been your challenge? I mean, our questions are around your eFarm basically. So, what's been the most difficult times launching, trying to get everything set? What have been your challenge? How has it been?
You know, on paper, any
Yes.
startup has got its
Yes.
look and feel perfection. But
Yes.
once you deploy into action where the rubber meets the road, that is where
Mm-hmm.
things really begin to take shape. And one of the biggest challenges that I've gotten to realize is brokering buy-in. On your journey, on your startup journey, you need more than money. You need more than capital. You need a few tactical, intentional moves to ensure that there are certain boxes you ought to tick that are as important as building your product, that are as important as launching whatever solutions you have in mind. And those boxes, if they are not ticked, then at some point the machinery might jolt to a halt, and at some point the machinery might get a bit cranky, to say the least. So it has been a very humbling experience where I'm going to put it this way. Maybe some of the audiences here have also left
Yes.
corporate, but thinking of
Mm-hmm.
living corporate. I want to caution my fellow Africans and even those that
Okay.
are far. I'm not saying they shouldn't, but I'm saying that remember that once you begin to implement that decision of departing or transitioning, you may be 20 years in corporate, but in the startup landscape, this may be a humbling, sobering truth. You're going to be day one. You are a day old. You are just hatching. So you might have to get used to that transition, meaning that you are leaving certain perks. I'm gonna give you an example. I think I have my business card, my card holder. You see this card holder here?
Mm-hmm.
Previously, when I would take out my Deloitte card, when I place it on the desk, my goodness, people go like, "You are with Deloitte." And now, in my early days, I've now been in business for more than 10 years now. So I've really learned the ropes a bit. But in my early days, I'll go in with that same excuse me, with that same courage, with that same boldness of it's me, remember? And they go like, so who you with? Who are you with now? And I realized very quickly that because Deloitte had a heritage of more than 200 years in the making, I didn't have a name for myself, even though I still have that same toolkit that produced outstanding results back then. I still had to now segue into a bit of a reality check that I need to put in the effort it takes to build my name, to build my brand. And those consulting years in the trenches came handy when I segued into blockchain, when I segued into technology, where the horse, the rider, and the racetrack are all equally important. And the horse, I'm referring to the business itself and the brand
Yes.
that for. The rider is a collective. It's me and the team. It matters who we are. It matters how we sharpen our acts before we mobilize into action. So all those moving parts become very important when you enter the racetrack. So yes, I wish that this humbling, sobering moments, I saw them coming.
Great, great. Let me ask also, as someone who has worked in the corporate and you're
Yes.
now in an entrepreneur, what's been your most defining moment in your entrepreneurship journey?
Strangely, it might be something that does not appear to have something to do with entrepreneurship. I remember
Okay,
being on
go
a
ahead.
project
Yes.
where yes, it's actually a very personal win for me that made me
Okay.
almost teary when I first had it. So we're in the middle of a project, and one of our project managers, we're busy, kind of like all hands on deck. We are prioritizing, kind of like meeting deadlines, meeting funder expectations, and things like that. And one of the project managers, we had a couple of them in 3 countries. One of the project managers reached out and said, "You know what? I want to personally thank you, not just as my boss, but as a big brother, because believing in me and allowing me to be part of this team has not just metamorphosed me intellectually and challenged me technically, but I need to put it out there that I've moved address, I've moved house, I've moved into a more decent place. I've come out of a very chaotic environment. If you're thinking a slum environment, think about Makoko town. Think about that
Mm,
chaotic environment in Nigeria once you cross the road into the mainland. So that shift became not just a win for him, but a win for me personally and a win for the team, because it's not about blockchain. It's not about technology. It's about the results that we can produce. First, for our team members in terms of fulfilling impact. And secondly, for the farmers that have been praying prayers that we need to be an answer to. So that was one of the really proud moments along my journey when I go like, wait a minute. You mean inclusion on the team can equal that? You mean showing up on a farmer's doorstep could literally see them having this weight be taken off because we showed up? So those were some of my teary moments along my journey.
great. Awesome. Um, let's talk about blockchain.
Yes.
How do you think blockchain can change or contribute to the agriculture industry? You've been heavily involved in blockchain now. So how do you think it can impact the industry of agriculture? Can you share some with us?
That's very interesting, because when you think about it, the farming sector in an African sense, Africa is home to 40 million farmers or so, and I would say about 32, 34 million of those, they are still trapped mainly in the sustenance or informal economy, whereas the balance are in the commercial sector. So with a continent, particularly that is increasingly becoming food insecure, we can have more of our team members, aka farmers, remaining on the bench or remaining on a back footing. So when blockchain comes into the picture to align itself as a solution, seeking a problem to do the heavy lifting, you find that there has to be quality assurance in place when you're speaking, what do you call it? When you're speaking food quality, because we can't get those players off the bench and go like, kumbaya, Africa needs your food. So you need to now move from the informal side and into the formal economy. You need to now cut your post-harvest losses. That's not where blockchain stops. Blockchain being a ledger technology starts first and foremost with addressing the quality assurance issues or moving parts. What went into your food? What are your processes? What are your records? What are your systems in place? So there's quite a number of elements that are quite typical, even when you look at considering a farmer for financial inclusion, or considering a farmer for scale, or considering a farmer to make a leap into the formal economy. Unless those farmers, dear Africa, unless those farmers make their leap into the formal economy and be included financially and be included in the marketplace in a true sense of the word, then perhaps our dream to become food secure and perhaps even become a breadbasket that feeds itself and feeds the world might remain a distant dream. So I often say it's not about blockchain. It's about the outward results that blockchain brings into the scene in terms of attainment of scale, attainment of bulletproof level records, and attainment of quality assurance, and attainment of transparency from farm to fork, so that we don't have any guesstimates or guessworks anymore. We love our farmers, but we still have to hold them to task and make sure that what ends up on our dinner table is not compromised in any way that could lead to food contaminations, or that could lead to any other surprises that my family, your family, or the families of those that are on this call would not want end up with in their fridge or their dinner table.
Okay, great. But I really wanted to break blockchain for us and how it can really impact the industry. I mean, for instance, blockchain. The word blockchain is a bit it's more like a big vocabulary. And
Yes.
speaking with somebody like you, who is a professional in the corporate industry,
Yes.
it's more technical with some of the words
Mhm.
you use. So I want to come again, break it down for us, maybe like 5 things blockchain
Yep.
can do. Are we going to get, is blockchain going to help us gather data? Is blockchain going to help us you know is it like a robotic machine, really break it down to like a 5 years old baby on his call who's listening to us should listen. I said, oh, I got what Mr. Shadrack is trying to do or is saying with blockchain. I want to come to our level. We are farmers. We don't really understand blockchain. We don't understand some of the technology you're using. We want to break it down to us so we could relate with blockchain.
I love that. I love that. I love it when you say we must break it down to a
Yes.
consumable level,
Yes.
even at the risk of watering it down, but take it to a level of a baby. I love that. I'm going to start with something familiar that most of the audiences on this call might be more familiar with. Let's start before we say blockchain, before we get caught up with the blocks or the chain reaction or the chain effect or chain elements. Let's remember that blockchain is a decentralized ledger technology. What does that mean as a
Okay.
DLT? You've seen a ledger before, even though a ledger, some of you have done accounting, even though a ledger
Mm-hmm.
used to be kept in a hand or in a manual format. Most ledgers now are now on our phone. Most of you,
Yes.
dear audience, might be familiar with opening a banking app somewhere. When you're opening a banking app or you're opening an app to send remittances or send money home, whenever you are interacting with an app or an application that exists in the financial services space, you're actually interacting with a ledger. In technical terms, what is a ledger?
Mm-hmm.
A ledger is a record keeping instrument. See it as a book that instead of having 1 page, 2 page, it's just this long continuous. That's why it's a ledger. You see, it has a beginning, it doesn't have an ending. It's got a current status until you actually close your bank account. That's when you're actually closing the ledger. Why do I start like that? And what makes blockchain a more superior and a more ideal solution when it comes to keeping records, not about your money in the bank, that will be more the fintech side, your crypto, we won't touch on that for now, but a ledger that is able to have all sorts of input elements, even via IoT or Internet of Things devices that are able to harvest or through monitoring, real-time monitoring, they're able to add whatever went into your food, whatever went into your apple. As you take a bite, you're able to say, wait, before I take a bite, let me actually scan the QR code and let this apple tell me a story. Where have you been? If you could interview an apple and say, who planted you? Under what conditions? On which plot of land? Was that the east part of Nigeria? Or is that on the equatorial belt around East Africa? Really, Apple, dear Apple, where do you come from? Or maybe most of the audiences, they enjoy coffee. Before you take that first sip of your dear coffee, you're thinking, I wonder where the beans came from. Were they a single drawn from one farm, or what were they from a particular region? And what really went into the beans? Or maybe some of you, they like to indulge in chocolate, and that's thanks to Cote d'Ivoire and Ghana being the hub for such inputs or raw material in the form of raw cocoa. So whenever you lean forward to take a bite of a chocolate, you're wondering, wait a minute, was there some child labor that went into this? All those ethical type questions you're asking yourself, that's why a ledger exists. You can go like, let me go and actually check. Why blockchain as a more superior bulletproof ledger? There's a technical term in the industry. It's called immutability, meaning the blockchain ledger, unlike the typical banking ledger or software as a service or any other type of ledgers that we always interact with without even thinking. Your email is actually a type of a ledger if you want to get to that level. But blockchain, because it exists in a team sport fashion, in a community, meaning that whenever you touch that ledger, it's not like your private email. This ledger, whether it's permissioned or private or public, there's a whole different sort of ledgers. But let's imagine a scenario. There's a farmer down the road, and that farmer is going to send my family and your family some crops. And then perhaps there are some quality assurers and inspectors that are monitoring the health dynamics, the hygiene, and other things. And they're all putting their records on that same ledger, which shows up on our phone. So what happens is, whatever happened to those tomatoes, the red gold as they call it, or whatever happens to the avos, the avocados, the green gold as they sometimes call it, or whatever happened to even millimil on its way, we all have access there. And should there be food contamination, God forbid, should there be food contamination along the way, maybe by the retail shelf, maybe by the warehousing, maybe by the storage, maybe by the transit point, should there be some contamination, and who knows, maybe there's been cases of listeriosis or other cases, should that be, in a world without blockchain, any party who's holding a ledger where they're keeping their cards close to their chest could go in there and actually edit it. And basically, I'm not sure which song goes by that, it wasn't me. So in that, what do you call it, that witch hunt, there's no witch hunt in the blockchain world. In a world where blockchain is fully deployed in the farming economy, there's no witch hunt. We simply consult the same ledger that brought those crops from farm to fork, and no one can edit it, no one can touch it. Or there's a book called Who Moved My Cheese? No one can move the cheese or the critical data without any party members or without any stakeholders in the room. Remember, blockchain is a team sport. Noticing that there is an uncle here who's moving the cheese because something happened to the cheese, or they're moving the data around the cheese, or they're moving the data around the milk because the milk turns out to be compromised. So there's greater accountability within a decentralized ledger. The word decentralized, to unpack that technical, it means it's not centered with one supplier, it's not centered with one key point, but it's evenly distributed. Think of it as truth that is evenly distributed and decentralized into many hands rather than remaining with one hand. Not today, tomorrow morning, if any of the audiences go to the supermarket shelf, maybe they're grabbing their favorite chocolate or they're grabbing their favorite tomato. If they were to look at it and go like, how do I know that this tomato has not been compromised? How do I know that the temperature during the transportation did not change? How do I know that beyond this red tomato shining and looking appealing, inside there might have been some processes that went on? Maybe it was kept in the sun for too long. Maybe the commercial buyers only acquired it at midday rather than buying it in the morning at 6 a.m. So that 6-hour missing window could be a blind spot in the food value chain that could later equal food contamination for your family or my family. So hence, all these moving parts make decentralized technologies, particularly blockchain, a bit of a more superior preferred choice rather than the traditional editable ledgers.
Great. uh, Great. But I think I could relate to the word ledger. And let me confess, when I heard blockchains, Bitcoin, um, and then there's another one again. Is it DFT? I can't recall now. I think is it DFT
Yes,
now?
yes,
I can't
yes.
recall the name. Yeah. Now, but when
Yeah,
I hear those terminology,
DeFi.
Bitcoin, yes, yes. So
Yes.
when I hear those words, Bitcoin and blockchains, are like, scam. I'm sorry, I'm a farmer anyway. I'm a farmer coming from Nigeria. So
Yes.
like, are these guys not coming to scam me? So when I hear those kind of terminology, like, are these guys not trying to use these words to scam? So I remember one time I hosted a conference in Port Harcourt City in Nigeria, and the a friend of mine gave me the venue. So after the event, he was trying to talk to us about blockchains, and she started from saying she went to UK to do some master's program trained by Jonathan during Jonathan's government, and now he's back. He understands this thing. We can make money as young people. Like, well, some people were interested, right? I feel like, first of all, I'm a farmer, and then are you not trying to scam me with this terminology? So that's what I think. So when I saw you and I was like, somebody coming from the corporate world talking about the blockchain, I think I should listen and know what's really happening with this blockchain. So, but I want you
I love
to,
that. No,
yeah,
I love the example you're making with podcast with the Port Harcourt event that you hosted. Look,
yes,
while in industry there will
yes,
be promises of a quick fix, or in any
yes,
industry there would be
yes,
the early adopters. And in this case, I want to remind the audiences that the very
yes,
first adopter, or rather adopter at scale of the blockchain technology is not new, by the way. The blockchain technology goes as far back as the early 90s. It was only
whoa,
when the collective persona known as Satoshi Nakamoto, who could be an entity, could be a group, could be an individual, now published that white paper just about a decade ago, that now blockchain as a viable technology at scale became, one, popular, and two, became relevant or applicable to the fintech or financial technology that we now knew, that we've come to know as cryptocurrency, or most specifically Bitcoin. However, coming from corporate and understanding that supply chains of any sort, value chains of any sort, they leave a digital dust along the way of massive amount of data. Now, before blockchain, which is a record keeping and data managing and data
Yes.
preserving technology. Because of that type of a truth machine, blockchain preserves the truth. It doesn't just protect the currency, it preserves the truth. So in our firm, we deal zero with cryptocurrencies. We deal zero with NFTs, non-fungible tokens. We deal zero
Yes.
with price. Those we have left them to our learned colleagues. On our side, we only focus our application and use case on agricultural value chains and supply chains that are rich in data. And because these supply chains are rich in data, I would like to, for a moment, pretend that you are that farmer from Port Harcourt, or you are that farmer from Kenya rural, and you are thinking,
Yes.
what blockchain got to do with me? Now I'm going to ask you a
Yes.
question. Listen, isn't it, if you are in Kenya, isn't it that for 10 years, KFC, the KFC, the what do you call it, the food outlet has been in your country as Kenya? 10 years, but for that 10 years, KFC has refused to source their potato chip raw material in the form of potatoes from your farm, his farm, her farm, and from anywhere, excuse me, in Kenya. Instead, for 10 years, KFC has been sourcing their potato ingredients for their fries, rather. We call them chips in South Africa. For their fries, they've been sourcing them from
Chips,
Egypt.
yeah.
You know why? Because they've been saying that Kenyan potatoes are inferior, which is not a fact, because those same potatoes in Kenya were export grade and export ready to markets such as Europe and the US. So blockchain, what does it do? Blockchain exists in the trust economy, dear. So what that means is, because blockchain is a trustless solution, trustless means if your records are here, I don't have to like you. I don't have to trust you. I will allow the numbers to speak to me. I will allow raw data and guarded data to talk to me. Did you put any pesticide in your farming processes or in your farming cultivation methods that perhaps could be harmful to my customers? I don't have to ask you. I'm going to ask the ledger that has been hand-holding you through your processes. So perhaps if you want to, I'm going to just digress a bit. There's that song that's been doing the rounds in South Africa and most parts of Africa, including the US and elsewhere. It says, you want to bamba? You want to play with the big boys. So if you want to play with the big boys, you can't afford to present inferior records and then tell KFC in Kenya, or KFC in Nigeria, or KFC in or rather any restaurant, and tell them, you can trust me, it's me, man, it's me. And then you tilt your head and you're using the African language and you're presenting an African story and you're using African standards. You say, it's me, support me. No, there's no support me in the industry. How we support you, we protect your records, so that when you want to play with the big boys can look at your records and they can soberly decide whether to include you in their value chain or exclude you. When you want to go to the bank to now borrow money or raise capital against whatever you have, those records of your farming journey and your yields and your outputs are not written, scribbled on a piece of paper where a pig might eat those records. That is a true story, by the way. There's a pig that ate a farming ledger that was kept by the hand. So we don't need that anymore. We need digitized and decentralized records that you can take to the bank to be financially included and be dignified. We don't need to tilt the head and now maybe say, feel sorry for me, support me. Nobody needs to feel sorry for Africa. Africa needs to tell its story on a ledger that cannot be edited or tampered with. Hence, blockchain is leveling the playing field.
Fantastic. I think this last session kind of, make everything more clearer to me as regarding blockchain. Yes. It's really, really clear. So well, now let me ask you, what are we expecting from you when you launch eFarm? Now you are in blockchain. So should we trust what we'll be getting from eFarm? Now that you're in blockchain, so of course you're going to use blockchain alongside it, the app, I guess. So what should we be expecting?
You can expect three things on technical
Yes.
terms. You can
Yes. Good.
expect a more robust quality assurance for both
Mm-hmm.
farmers,
Mm-hmm.
buyers, and consumers. You can
Mm.
you can expect democratized and simplified quality assurance and records that are bulletproof. That's number one. And thanks to the smart contract, thanks to the ledger, ensuring that proofing of the truth. Number two, you can expect increased market access for the farmers who have been elbowed out of the room, where the big boys tell them that no, your name is not good enough. What is your surname again? No, I don't know you to be somebody who's deserving to be in the room. Leave your boxes over there, empty your truck over there, turn around and disappear. When you're gone, me and the big boys are gonna put our signature on your crops. That's not allowed. If you have sweat, blood, sweat, and tears, then your name should be on the crops. Your story must accompany the crops, and your efforts and your standard of excellence must be reflected by you being allowed to access the market, by eFama enabling households and commercial buyers and hotels and other players to order directly from you. No longer should you be biased by the big boys, that thing that you shouldn't be allowed in the big boys club. The third thing that you can expect is
Mm-hmm.
a more sustainable businesses in the form of farmers that whose records and whose systems are now in place. So those are the three things: quality assurance, access to market, and sustainable farming businesses. That's what eFama stands for. Only those three pillars. We're not going to wave a magic wand. We're going to build into those three core pillars, and that's it. That's what's been keeping us awake.
Great. Awesome. Awesome. But I love that, and we look forward to see those things you mentioned to us. We look forward to see them in future when you fully launch. So when are you going to launch? Is there any specific date you should be looking out for the
We
launching?
do, we do, we do. We
Okay.
have put
Good.
a flag around. We have put a flag in the ground to really navigate the last mile of our technical moving parts. So within a month from today, we should have gone live. And while that's happening, by the way, our business unit or our market adoption has been working round the clock, where through industry ecosystems, we've been onboarding quite a number of farmers. This is unofficial for now, but the
Fantastic.
recent update says that we are looking at somewhere in the vicinity of between 5 to 8,000 farmers. But that's something that is
Mm.
taking shape. We've got the technical, that's the engineering of the solution. We've got the quality assurance
Yes.
of the product
Yes.
itself, that is taking the last mile. And then we've got the business unit that is responsible for adoption. They have been a lot more ahead, even more than the technical team that's navigating the last mile. So a month at most, we should cut the ribbon, and we should now use this eFama marketplace to help pitch in to shape the Africa we want.
Fantastic. I mean, helping over 5,000 to 8,000 farmers is a lot. That's really great. But one more question before we start thinking of wrapping up. I want to ask, because most times when I interview or interact with entrepreneurs, one of the biggest challenges is always funding. I don't want to ask you that, but I want to ask: have you been able to fund e-farmers so far to this extent? Because you're almost launching now, so have you been able to fund them to this point?
You
Sorry, have you
know,
been able
it's
to fund
interesting.
them? Yes.
Yes, it's a very interesting thing because we didn't raise one, but we have raised two capital raises. We have raised two funding tranches to date, and it's interesting that we're talking about blockchain as a ledger,
Yes.
because our
Yes.
track record, our track record has been speaking for itself in terms of what we have done prior to actually entering the sector. So our track record of delivery on other projects, including a time where we moved an African-based entity from $500 to more than $2 million dollars in revenue within 36 months. So what you are doing before you even approach the funders, there are a number of items, just 3 that you have to tick before you even think funding. You have to think about how you're going to find clients, so your adoption has to be clear, and you have to know your industry, your knowledge of the terrain or the racetrack. It must be solid. And then, of course, the third one is building the product itself, whatever it is, whether it's a service or it's a marketplace. You know what's interesting? Most people think that you need capital to build a product. That's what you'll get to on item 3. But you need to know how to find clients. You need to have a clear adoption strategy. You can build that without money. And you also need to ensure that you have an industry knowledge that the funders, when they lean in to go like, so why you and why the sector and why now? Then you don't go around going, ooh, well, I'm an African, feel sorry for me. We don't need anybody to feel sorry for Africans. We need Africans to do their homework on industry knowledge of the market landscape, know-how in acquiring clients, your client acquisition. Then you must have a solid product, be ready to be built. So ideate around what you want to build and what you want funders to fund that build and how that will go about. So if you take 1 and 2, then the funders will help you to come alongside you, to handhold you with their checkbook, of course, to now build a resilient product, even if it's a minimum viable product that can be deployed into market.
Fantastic. Great. But great. So, but how did you respond so far? Can you touch that for us, please?
Pardon?
I mean, have you been able to raise money, raw cash to pump into your business? I mean, this eFama, are you been able to sustain eFama with funding raising? Did you only grants or loan from government as government?
Oh, brilliant. That's a good question. That is a good question. Remember, whenever you come to a point where you need capital,
Yes.
dear fellow entrepreneur, you're going to be spoiled for choice. You're going to, are you going to go the grant route? Are you going to go the venture capital? Are you going to go private equity? Are you going to go for a loan at the bank? Or are you going to go friends and family? Let me start with the first one. Friends and family.
Yes.
The Silicon Valley rule book often says, before you ask for formal capital, you need to be at a pre-seed level and ask friends and family to believe in you and to fund you while you ideate.
Yes.
Well, I don't know how many African viewers or audiences are in the room right now, but I want to communicate to our US and European brothers to say friends and family, 99% of the time, doesn't apply in Africa, because you are broke, your friends are broke, your family is broke, and they are hoping that you are a parachute and jump on this plane and make something work. So let's not stop applying copy and paste, where what worked in America, in Silicon Valley, might work in Africa. So we can rule that out. There's often no friends and family. Friends and family are busy battling their own lion and fighting their own bear. So they don't have any resources left to now put in your kitty. So we can rule that out. So how we were able to enter the space. In Switzerland, there's a particular grant that we were able to secure. And also in the US, there's a US-based multinational with presence in Africa that gave us a head start into blockchain itself until the Swiss-based grant entered the room. Some of you might actually know them, that are quite big in with a particular protocol called the NEAR protocol. So they came alongside us. So next time you bump into NEAR, the NEAR Foundation, the NEAR protocol, just know that you're bumping into our big brother. So yes, without NEAR, we would have made giant strides into solutioning the farmers to produce the Africa we want.
Great, awesome. I mean, that's very good. I like, even though I'm a Nigerian, and even though I don't like very flogged the issue of brothers and family, but that's really true. A lot of times we hear that brothers and friends and family are the first call in terms of funding, but when your family and friends are also broke, it's something else. But that's true.
Talking about friends and family being broke.
Yeah.
Whenever we fly, they make a call. They make a call on the what do you call it? They make a call on the plane to say that when the mask drops above, you need to secure it on your mouth, and then only then look at helping those that are next to you to secure the mask. Well, here's the case. Friends and family are busy not having masks of their own because nothing dropped from the sky like in America. Friends and family don't have masks, and you don't have masks. Everybody's trying to use their hands secure oxygen because something is happening to this plane economically. So you've got your hands. You need to make sure that you do your homework with what your hands can do. So use your hands proverbially to protect yourself as a gas mask. Once you tick those early boxes, by the time you meet funders, they must see that you did your homework in certain areas. But try not to burden your friends and family because they are trying to create a cup format with their own hands. Just give them a break a bit. Do your homework as best as you can, and then reach out to funders that are within your proximity, whose heartbeat and priority focus is in sync with the industry you are trying to repair or disrupt.
Great. I think to my viewers, guys, I think this evening, Mr. Shadrack has done a lot of justice to blockchain as regarding to the impact in the agricultural sector, and we've seen what he's building, what we expected from his um, recent company that he just recently launched, and then he has really done some justice to some of these things to us. But before we go, I've really enjoyed the session, so I want to ask. So far, as the South African government support you, so far, have they been supportive in these innovations so far?
That's a good question. My co-founder, Preeti, who's my wife and co-founder, we have had a privilege leading
Okay.
up to ending up in blockchain. We have had a privilege of working into the continent for more than a decade. So by the time we ended up in blockchain, in technology, and now in agritech through eFama, we have had a privilege of really having some really decent number of interactions with the public sector, aka the government. At one time,
Mm-hmm.
the government of Ethiopia flew us out there in the middle of COVID to now have what do you call it? To have a very strategic engagement with the Prime Minister's office and His Excellency, the Prime Minister himself. Locally here in South Africa, we've been quite privileged because there is a blockchain association known as SANBA, the Southern Africa a blockchain network that has really been in salutations of the headways that we have been making and the inroads. They are a part of the science and technology department unit within government. So they have invited us to really share some of our findings in industry, and they have also imparted to us some really industry best practice. And of course, across the spectrum, my wife has spoken in government forums, I've spoken in government forums. Remember, back at Deloitte, I work personally at the intersection of the private and public sector. So I already have certain muscle memories of how to engage government as a big brother, and how to be in a courtship with both the government, the private sector, and the wider stakeholders. So what I want to emphasize with entrepreneurs out there, maybe you're in Nigeria, maybe you're in Kenya, decide whether you're going to be among the naysayers that go like, government will never support you, or you're going to say, maybe government has not appeared supportive so far, but I'm going to approach the other side to now ask them specifically what I want to journey with them on, whether that's your local municipality or your state or your region where you're based. Just keep the gloves on. Don't let the gloves come off, and decide whether you're going to be critical of African governments in wherever they are failing, and there's lots of failures. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. There's lots of cracks in our systems. But in those cracks, even with the gold mafia show doing the rounds, there's lots of cracks. We have a lot of housekeeping to do as Africa. But in all of that, now and then you'll find that a rose is cracking through the pavement, is cracking through the tarmac, and there's those elements of hope where, in the most surprising way, there are those government units that will reach out even to the likes of Professor Ndubise Ekwekwe and say, we need advisory input from you. We are not coping. How can you help us? Sometimes we are waiting for the government to help us, but the government is waiting for us to go and help them as innovators and groundbreakers.
Great. We are going to quickly wrap up, but I have 2 more questions to go. But the first question is, you mentioned somewhere along the line, you mentioned that you've mastered, because you worked in the corporate sector, which was Deloitte, you were able to master how to keep the government somehow. So, I mean, let me say in a layman terms, if I understand your terms very well, you've been able to keep very good relationship. Can you break with us to entrepreneurs in the house some few skills we should develop to be able to keep, I mean, to be able to keep that kind of relationships, to be able to keep relationships around the government sector? Can you share
That's a
with us
good
some things we should do? Yes.
Good question. Remember, my fellow startup founders and my
Yes.
fellow innovators and entrepreneurs, remember, in corporate, there is a specific field or a specific business unit or specific discipline that is called government relations, meaning that office is what represents the corporate to engage with government, successfully. But when you venture out on your own, there's no business unit. There's fewer resources. So you are the government relations. So, and not only are you a government relations, not only blockchain, but a number of businesses are actually a team sport. So first and foremost, look at your perspective, look at your mindset. Do you perceive government as the enemy, or do you perceive government as the stakeholder that you need within your ecosystem? If you perceive government to be one of the stakeholders, some are industry regulators, others are industry strategic bodies, others are pure government, whether at a local level or regional level. If you perceive government as a stakeholder, let's break it down. What's your stakeholder engagement strategy? How do you intend to engage the government? Please don't tilt your head and say, government, feel sorry for me. I carried the passport that you gave me. Put the passport away. What you must take out. And please, no such stories. You need to think of it as business. What is the government doing and what is the government not doing? What kind of pain points does the government in your region or in your industry, where are they winning? Where are they failing? When you know those findings, then you begin to shape a value proposition or a value statement when you reach out to them. If you're the government, I will say, dear Mr. Kenneth, I know that in the Lagos state, you are in charge of agricultural transformation as tasked by the governor over there of the state. I'm actually a leader of a local startup that is speaking to artificial intelligence, blockchain, and IoT in terms of helping to accelerate what you are doing. I'm not going to bore you in this email or in this brief meeting. Can we have maybe a 20 minutes, 30 minutes discussion where I will unpack exactly what my startup is doing that is perfectly in sync with the vision of the state, with some of the development plans that you've signed off, and with some of the policies that you have in place, and with some of the wins that you are realizing, and some of the blind spots that my solution will help to bring either further clarity or further traction. So it's a pure business, no sad story, no hating. And also be careful that the government doesn't catch you hating on them in public. I'm not saying the government is perfect. Actually, any African government from the 54 or 55, none of them are perfect. They are far from
True.
it. But so, my English teacher used to say, those that intend to live in a glass house, they must not be caught throwing stones. So don't criticize your stakeholder. don't now what do you call it? Don't monitor yourself where you are scared to speak truth to power. That's different. That's different. If there is abuse by government, they must be called out on it. But if you need government as your fellow partner in your journey, be truthful when you need to be, but don't go out on social media and start throwing stones. Yeah, government is going to the dogs. Yeah, those elders are too old. They are idiots. No. We need to really be very intentional. If you have got something to take up with them, go and have a meeting with them and say, ladies and gentlemen, in this area, that area, you are shooting out the lights. You're doing very well. But in that other area, you are not doing as well. And that's where you need the private sector. That's where you need the innovators to enter the room and do the joint heavy lifting. So remember, don't throw the baby with the bath water, and don't be blind to where the government is wrong or is failing, but don't come in there guns blazing and be a naysayer. Come in there and give constructive inputs, constructive criticism, and constructive feedback. That also says, I mark you correct here, but in that area, you need us. And here's why. We're going to put value on the table. Not a set story, but value on the table. Then we take it from there. Maybe they will say yes. Maybe they'll slam the door on your face, not because they are the government, but because they are human beings. If they do that, just soldier on. Welcome to the world of entrepreneurship. Move right down the road and knock on another door, because that's what entrepreneurs do. They find a way to win, and they have that resilience of the rural farmers. That's my granny and my mom who taught me resilience before I knew how badly I will need it.
Good. I think you shared so much value to us this evening. So as we begin to wrap up this evening, I want to ask you, what is your last word? What's your advice to us, to others, startup founders listening to us this evening? What's your advice, your final advice to us as we close this show this evening? Yes.
That's a good question. I'm thinking about what I wish I knew when I began my journey.
Okay.
And
Great.
most of us, when we start out our startup journey or our newly discovered journey as a founder or as a techpreneur or an agripreneur, whatever hat you are wearing out there, or even as a farmer. So I want to
Mhm.
just share with you the three pillars that I wish I knew back then, and now I'm practicing them on a daily basis. Those are not raising capital. Before you even raise capital, and before you even start to monetize your solution or acquire customers, consider the following three pillars: learning, social media, and branding. Why are those things
Mm,
important? When somebody goes like, Kenneth, host me on your show, Kenneth goes like, so who's asking? It's Shadrack. All right. You're based in Africa. I'm based in Africa. I've got presence out there in Europe. We like similar things, but who are you? No, I want to ask you. I'm going to look you up. That's what we do, right? So when I look you
mhm.
up, what do I find? Do I find that you're a digital ghost? Or do I find that there's a body of findings that position you well for me to go like, I think you are an authority or you are emerging as a thought leader in this space. We should come to you for answers. We should come to you for value. We should come to you for solution. Those things are not going to speak themselves. You got to be on social media intentionally. Please don't be on social media to maybe shake your buttocks or be carried off with too much TikToking and too much of this. You need to be in a social media that is practical. I'm personally on LinkedIn, even though I'm visible on Twitter. But LinkedIn, being quite professional, helps me to really roll out
True.
telling of my story, sharing of my insights, and just showing my heart to the public. Because sometimes Africans or the world at large, they don't care so much what you know until they know what your heart is like. So remember, learn continually. Even in this call, I left a conference during the day. We're just hosting the Africa Investment Conference here in Santon, where I'm based across the last couple of days. So I was at a conference. And when I'm not at a conference learning, absorbing, taking in stuff, I'm now delivering what I learned. So I'm both a learner and a teacher at the same time. I'm both a
Yeah.
follower, thought leader. So remember, learning is very critical. And social media, use it intentionally to tell the story of the rider, the horse rider. That's you. That's your team. And to tell the story of the horse, that's your platform, that's your entity, that's your startup. And remember, branding is storytelling. Until Africa tells its story, until you tell your story and you are unapologetic about it and you are open cut about it, you don't try to be perfect. You don't try to be like apologetic. You are just somewhere there in the middle where you are yourself because everyone else is being themselves. Unless you do those three things, continuous learning, effective social media, and branding, then you're not ready for the other things if you don't go through those things. You're not ready for customer acquisition. You're not ready for raising of capital because those two will always send you to who's asking. Who is asking that we must try out their platform? Who's that? Okay, let me look them up quickly. What will I find? Will I find stupid dancing videos of you? Or will I actually find interesting things that you're doing out there to shape the Africa we want? Keep that in mind.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your time. We enjoyed your session this evening. Thank you very much for the valuable insights you shared with us this evening, guys. We've been blessed by your thoughts this evening. I want to also appreciate the audience. Thank you for staying with us. Thank you for sharing. I've been seeing a lot of your comments. Thank you very much for joining us this evening. It's always a joy to have you guys. So before as we begin to wrap up, I want to repeat to you guys once again. If you've not subscribed to our YouTube channel, do it to subscribe to our YouTube channel, and then don't forget to hit like or drop your comments, drop your questions. We'll do get back to you again. Don't also forget to hit the notification button so that you get notified whenever we are up live like this. Till next week Friday. Next week Friday will be here again, same time, same station, every time at 7 p.m. Thank you very much for your time this evening. Thank you very much, Mr. Shadrack, for joining us once again. We are truly grateful to have you. So it's on this note, we'll bring the show to an end. Thank you all.
Thank you kindly.